Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, it's review time once again, and today's review is going to come in the form of the latest film in the X-Men series, X-Men First Class, directed by Matthew Vaughn. Now, prior to the film's release, let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, no one thought X-Men First Class was going to work. After the track record that 20th Century Fox had set up for themselves after X-Men The Last Stand, and then with the abysmal film X-Men Origins Wolverine, no one had faith in 20th Century Fox. Everybody, whether you just be casual moviegoers or die-hard X-Men fans, literally wanted 20th Century Fox to give up the rights to the X-Men franchise and hand it over to Marvel, so that Marvel Studios would be able to go about and craft a new set of X-Men films that would live up to the fans' expectations. But no, 20th Century Fox never gave up the rights, and when the title and the concept of X-Men First Class was first released and brought to the public attention, no one thought it was going to work, because it was the origin story of Charles and Eric and what made them become enemies and what their lives were like before they became enemies. And while it is an interesting concept and would draw in a good number of X-Men fans and potentially new audiences, in the end I think most people just weren't sure that that was enough of a interesting storyline to get public interest in the X-Men films started up again. But as time went by and the film got a good director, a solid cast, and a very interesting story, and then the images and the trailer started to show up for X-Men First Class, people actually started to pay attention. And I have to say that the end result does not disappoint. X-Men First Class is a very good film. It is definitely a return to form in the X-Men film series. And I believe, in my opinion, that people can breathe a sigh of relief because X-Men First Class is good. Now, story-wise, everyone should more or less know exactly what X-Men First Class is about. But for those who don't know, this is literally just a quick background check. So, the story is set in 1962, around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the film happens to focus on the origin stories of Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher before they became Professor X and Magneto, following their lives as individuals up until the point when they happen to first come into contact with each other, become friends, and then establish the ideals that make them become men of opposite opinions and eventually become enemies. Now let's move on to the actual characters who happen to be portraying these characters on screen. Now, James McAvoy, I know he's always been known as a really great actor, but I've never actually seen any of his films, I'm not going to lie. So when I heard that he was going to be Professor X in the X-Men First Class film, I have to say I didn't know much about his abilities, but people said he was good, so I was literally going to go back and give him a chance to see what was going on. And his version of Professor X is absolutely fantastic. He puts a whole new spin on the character, but also happens to make subtle references to the Patrick Stewart version of Professor X, and all of his different types of abilities, some of which were never even explored in the world of the original X-Men trilogy, are just fantastic. James McAvoy just brings so much tenacity and flair, charm and wit to a character who most people may just regard as a sort of standard bald guy just chilling in a wheelchair with amazing powers and some fancy dialogue. But James McAvoy just takes Professor X to a new level, and I thought he was brilliant in the movie. He was almost the central character in the film, were it not for Michael Fassbender being Magneto in the film as well. Michael Fassbender in the film is just unbelievably awesome. He is one of the most brutally cool guys I've ever seen on screen for a long time. He has a dark, very painful childhood and has repressed memories that fuel his rage for revenge and resentment in the world. And he is just such a great character because he has so many levels to work with when he's being a bad guy, or whether he's just brooding over his history in the past. Michael Fassbender is just great. He commands the screen when he's there, and he is just a legend. His version of Magneto had added a whole new level to the character, and I am so glad that I happened to see him in the film. And also, you have to go about and give a mention to Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw. He is one of the coolest bad guys I have ever seen. He has so many different levels and amazing talents to being able to speak so many different languages and have so many different dealings with different people from different countries. It is just wonderful. Also, the dialogue that he gets given is really good as well. And when he talks to people, he's really menacing. And you know that he's a badass and you don't want to go about and mess with him because you know he'll mess you up, period. And all the other cast members happen to do really well in their respective roles as well. One other thing I happen to like about X-Men First Class was the dialogue in the movie. It is very well crafted, and Jane Goldman, along with her other screenwriters, Zach Stentz and Ashley Miller, have actually crafted a really, really good script. And I have never actually paid attention to how well scripts are in films until now, so I have to go back and give my props to those guys. Now, for all the things that were good with X-Men First Class, there were a few problems that I happened to pick up in the film, literally of my own opinion. There are a few characters within the cast that do become secondary members to the film, and you wish that they had had a little bit more screen time, especially when it comes to Sebastian Shaw's henchmen, Azazel and Riptide. Riptide doesn't even say anything throughout the entire film, and Azazel only has a few words and one entire sentence in the entire film, and I felt that they were a little bit of wasted characters, really. Besides when they happen to be kicking ass in, like, their fight sequences, otherwise they were just like, standard henchmen, and I'm assuming that there was a lot more to those characters, so I was a bit gutted about that. Also, January Jones's performance as Emma Frost was really, really questionable in my opinion. In a way, it sort of worked the way she portrayed the character in the film, but I know in the comics and from what I saw in Wolverine and the X-Men, she happens to be a fairly intelligent and, well-rounded character who has a lot more to say than she does in the actual film itself. She doesn't come across as a smart person, but literally sort of like a henchman that happens to have, some degree of advanced powers. So overall, X-Men First Class is a breath of fresh air in the X-Men film series. It brings the X-Men series back to form, and in my opinion is my favourite film since X-Men number 2. If anything, you could argue that this film is the best film in the series, or is just as good as X-Men 2. Now obviously, X-Men First Class isn't for everybody. There will be a lot of people that may not watch the film purely because they feel that 20th Century Fox aren't going to go about and rectify the problems of the X-Men series. Some fans may say that the X-Men series is still not up to scratch and needs to be rebooted, or you may just be a person not interested in X-Men, period. But I highly recommend X-Men First Class, and it's definitely a good summer film to go about and keep the ball rolling up until the point of the next Marvel film, Captain America: The First Avenger. So overall, I'd give X-Men First Class an 8.5 out of 10. So for me, the Hypersonic 55, this is me signing out.